So again, thank you for the introduction. Thank you for your attention. As it was said, my name is Arnis Paršovs. And indeed, I'm a graduate of the cybersecurity TalTech and University of Tartu joint cybersecurity curriculum and a fresh PhD from the University of Tartu. And I'm also currently leading the applied cybersecurity research group here at the Institute of Computer Science. And we are not a big group. We are just 3 people, but we do have a big ambition to contribute to the cybersecurity field here in Estonia. And perhaps a bit more specifics of our group, as perhaps the word applied in the title of our group may indicate, we are not so much focused on the fundamental security research or fundamental research in the field of security. But rather, we are applying the existent knowledge to analyze or assess security of real-world ICT systems or solutions. And more specifically, we're interested in the technology and solutions that are somewhat more specific to Estonia. And the reason is because it is unlikely that the international research community will be interested to study or focus specifically on the solutions or technology that is used maybe mainly or only in Estonia, right? So someone has to fill this gap, and then we have decided to take this mission upon ourselves. Now, in the rest of this presentation, a very short presentation, I will go or provide you a few very specific examples on how we and our students have recently contributed to the security of our e-state. And let me start with the research of our bachelor student, Semyon Kravchenko. And basically what he did is that he compiled first a list of Estonian e-services that are using eID, and for each e-service he specified what type of electronic identity tool is used to authenticate the users, be it ID card, mobile, smart ID, and so on. And so this list here contains more than 240 e-service providers, but this list, of course, is not complete because here we have only these e-services that we were able to find. Then as the follow-up activity for these e-services which support ID card authentication, we performed a list of experiments to verify whether the implementation and configuration of ID card authentication has been done correctly to not introduce any security risks. Now, the most surprising finding was that we were able to discover several e-service providers where the ID card authentication could be bypassed entirely. And these were the arve.ee, our well-known print ncity.com, elisa.ee, and the most critical was the flaw in the online banking website of the Coop Bank. And it was critical not only because one could access bank accounts of the Coop Bank customers, but at that time Coop Bank was also providing BankLink, and it's also providing now the BankLink authentication service. So what it meant that the users could be impersonated also in any other website or e-service that relied on Coop Bank's internet bank authentication. So what we see here that there is the security dependency aspect as this flaw affected not only Coop Bank itself, but also the other websites which relied on the Coop Bank for authentication. Now, but anyhow, the core point here is that it's much better if so to say good guys discover these vulnerabilities and report it to the system owners than the bad guys discover it and abuse them. And a good example of the second case, when the bad guys discovered vulnerabilities, we found out from the incident which became known this summer, where a hacker downloaded close to 300,000 ID card photos from the servers of Estonian Information System Authority. And perhaps maybe even some of you have been the victims of this data leak. And now, interestingly, if I correctly understand the cause of this security flaw, then our experiments our tests would have discovered this security issue already in the beginning of this year. However, unfortunately, we were not able to discover because simply this e-service was not among the list of the e-services we knew about. So simply we didn't know the existence of this e-service. And well, let's hope for the better luck next time. Another thing which I would like to mention is that our research group has a special relationships with the Estonian Information System Authority, or RIA in short. And the reason is because quite a few of our findings have fallen in the field of their responsibility. And for example, here we can read about the researchers at the University of Tartu helping to fix a critical security bug in the ID card browser extension, and similar things. Another specific example, a recent example which I'd like to mention is our contribution to TARA service. So we performed a security analysis of RIA's authentication service TARA. And I think that most of you have used this TARA service. You have seen it and have used it. And what it basically is, it is a centralized authentication service provided by RIA to public institutions where a user is redirected to this central TARA service, authenticated, and after a successful authentication, the user is redirected back to the original e-service. And as you understand, there is some specific protocol which works behind the scenes. And then what we did is that we looked at this protocol and analyzed its security. Now, the good thing is that the core of the protocol is well done and it is secure. But still, we were able to find a list of issues, non-critical perhaps issues, but that could improve the security against some more advanced or more specific attacks against the TARA service. So we hope that perhaps in the next iteration of the TARA development, our recommendations will be taken into account. And the most recent, our contribution has been to the development of the Web eID solution. And I'll say a few words of this Web ID solution because probably you haven't heard of it, I guess most of you at least, but this will affect us all very soon. So the Web eID is the name of the solution which is currently developed by RIA, which will introduce significant architectural changes to the way how we use our ID cards to authenticate to e-services. And so the idea is that traditionally this feature has been the part of web browser, but now this Web ID solution will move it to the browser extension. And the idea is that this will make the solution more flexible and more reliable. And here, what you see here is the graphical user interface of this Web ID browser extension when performing the ID card authentication to a website. So this solution is basically done. It is ready to be shipped out to our computers. However, so after we took a detailed look at the protocol that is proposed by this solution, we found a list of security risks with the data format used in this protocol. And we wrote a technical report titled "On the Format of the Authentication Proof Used by RIA's Web eID Solution," where we described the issues that we found. Now, don't get me wrong here, the protocol itself is secure, and RIA has also ordered security analysis that proves the security of the protocol. But the problem, what we see here, and what we also see maybe in other developments of ICT solutions, is that the human aspects of cybersecurity are maybe neglected. And in this particular case, what we saw is that the data format used in the protocol, it promotes several insecure development patterns. What it means is that basically the developers, the humans, who at the end of the day will have to implement this protocol in their e-services, there is a risk that they will introduce security issues or misconfigurations that may lead to data leaks, for instance. And so what we see from our experience is that the cryptography is rarely broken. But what the cause for data leaks are implementation issues or misconfigurations, as what you also saw in the first slide of this presentation. So it's not only enough to develop the secure protocol where the math is correct, but it is also important to develop protocol in a way where the possibility for the developers implementing this solution making security issues is reduced. And so basically this criticism was about this part specifically. Now, the good thing here is that RIA has taken into account our criticism, and they are working to improve their data format of the new protocol to take into account these suggestions provided by us. Now, finally, to summarize, so far the research focus of our group has centered around the electronic identity card and its ecosystem. And it can pretty much make sense because electronic identity is a cornerstone for providing all different types of e-services, right? And the good example here is, for instance, the internet voting here, because the internet voting relies heavily on the security of the electronic identity solutions that we use to cast our vote. And on the other side, e-voting is also a technology solution which is very specific to Estonia. It's basically used only in Estonia, right? So, I do believe that Estonian academia has much to contribute to the security of Estonian e-voting and similar topics. Now, the problem, of course, is that we are lack in human resources who will actually perform this research. And unfortunately, it seems to me that we can't scale this up simply by putting more funding in it. And so the direction of somehow raising these prospective researchers who will also have this personal ambition and interest to solve these type of problems is the thing that actually we needed to scale it up. But okay, so with this, I conclude my presentation. The final note here is that this is the webpage of our research group, and we try to keep this webpage up to date. And so it contains the references to all our public activities in case you're interested to look at them. So yeah, thank you for your attention. And if there are some questions, I'm ready to take them.
Okay, appreciate the presentation. And first of all, to me, the first idea that popped into my head when I saw the first few slides of your talk is that this type of work demonstrates how important it is to have at least some of the core capabilities available in Estonia, in Estonian universities, because you can't buy that expertise internationally, or because of the reasons you mentioned. So the questions, I'm going to ask you roughly the similar questions that I asked the previous presenter. So from Ryan, I asked what are the most serious cyber incidents you have faced. From you, I'm going to ask what could be the most serious cyber incidents that your research has sort of prevented, or hypothetically prevented at least.
Yeah. Oh, yes, so there has been a lot. Basically, I wrote my entire PhD thesis about these findings. My PhD thesis was about the security challenges with the Estonian ID card, and also describing the security incident which Rain mentioned in 2017, and also some other issues. So indeed, I see that the core focus should be spent to harden these central building blocks of our e-society, right? Which is indeed electronic identity, which is the same e-voting and all these authentication protocols are these trust dependencies between the electronic services and different service providers. So this is the core. If that breaks, then we will be in the trouble. But of course, there's also other things which are not less important, which also need to be tackled by someone, and we hope that this will be tackled by someone, if not by us.
All right, thanks. I hope you are okay with a couple of more questions. Sure. The first one. Kind of a funny one, I guess. You just shared your social security number in the presentation. Is this considered a secure practice?
Right. So Shared, indeed, I shared. Well, the short answer is that this might be an issue in a different society, maybe in America or I don't know, Germany, but in Estonia, basically, this data is considered to be public, and fortunately, this data cannot be abused to take loans or to, how to say, steal our identity. So, of course, that personal identity code in this particular case leaks my gender and my date of birth, but this is not something I would consider very private information to protect. So that would be a short answer to this question.
We get more questions. Which authentication method do you find is the most secure or trustworthy? The ID card, the smart ID, or the mobile ID? Or and the follow-up to that is, which one do you personally use?
Right.
First of all, as an expert.
Yeah, very good question. Now, the answer to the first question is clearly that, regardless of my PhD research and the findings found there, the ID card is significantly, considerably, fundamentally more secure electronic identity tool that we have in Estonia. Mobile ID and smart ID, unfortunately, doesn't provide the same security benefits, which we also see from the recent phishing attacks against the banking clients. As a culprit, the mobile ID or smart ID is used as an act vector to impersonate or to access the bank accounts of these victims. So that's the first answer, but maybe you'll find it funny, but of course the second answer is that I myself do use mobile ID and smart ID, and less I use ID card just because it's more convenient. Right. And of course, I do my risk assessment, and I believe that I'm more security literate than the average person, and I can use it more securely. But of course, these security risks affecting mobile ID and smart ID also affect me, because in these solutions, the trust is towards the service provider and even some intermediate, the service provider and the provider of the solution. So an ID card, that trust is we don't have to trust them as much as in these cases. So yeah, ID card, the short answer is that ID card is a way more secure if used correctly, but at the same time, apparently, society needs some more convenient ways to work. But then, of course, the question is, perhaps these less secure authentication tools shouldn't be used for security critical activities, right? And maybe, as you know, that from the time being, the Estonian health information system could be accessed only using the ID card. And there were reasons for that. And starting, caused due to the COVID pandemic, we have people needed to access and register for COVID certificates and so on. And these security requirements were relaxed. And we have a current situation where, yes, you can access your health data also using mobile ID and smart ID. But of course, that introduced the additional risks.
Yeah, thanks. And there's a third question here as well, which I'd like to ask. How are you going to be sure that something like the ID card picture leak this summer won't happen again? Especially when preventing something like this was not in the list of priorities.
Well, there are several things here. The one thing is, which also touched in this presentation, is that we have to design technology and protocols that make it less likely for the implementation issues to occur. Because what happened with RIA and the data leak was that this was a misconfiguration issue, right? So it was possible to bypass the authentication because it wasn't correct security. So therefore, I see it very important to contribute, that is super important, the way how we introduce security solutions or the security properties of the security solutions, because from that will be dependent the development of or what follows. The other aspect is that, honestly, I am surprised that that we don't have these data leaks every day. No, of course, every day is maybe an over-exaggeration, but the point is that what we had here in this situation was that we had a person, one specific attack or threat, attacker who decided to exploit this flaw, right? I mean, day to day, there are security researchers or simply the bystanders who discover security issues in our estate, and they do the responsible thing and they disclose this without abusing it. What we had in this summer was that there was actually this security flaw was abused, and to a very high extent, as you saw, 300,000 photos were downloaded. So. Unfortunately, we also resolve these all these ransomwares and all these cases where let's say health information is being stolen from the Finnish case. No, all the data that is gathered somewhere and collected is a ticking bomb, and I'm asking my question. I'm actually pretty happy. I mean, surprised that we don't have serious security incidents in this field, because there are a lot of people involved that provide this to ensure security, right? There are a list of administrators. Every administrator is a potential source or the target how access to that information could be accessed. And I mean, the administrators are not people above ourselves. They use the same security solutions or lack of security solutions that we are using. They are the same human beings. They can be attacked as everyone else. So I think that we haven't heard of this is because we don't have these attackers who would be willing to go this to cause damage to us. So, but of course, preferably, we wouldn't want to rely for well-being of society to rely on the absence of the attacker, right? We would like to make it secure even in the presence of the attacker.
All right, and the questions keep on coming. So I said it's the last session, so we have some time, I guess. In general, how cooperative are the responsible / affected otherwise involved parties? What do you think could be done to improve this?
Okay,
the first one here on the list.
How cooperative are the responsible affected otherwise involved parties? How responsible? Okay. I would say that they're quite responsible, although in this case I mentioned, there were some service providers, not to mention specifically, for whom it took more than months to fix this critical security issue which we found, and their explanation was that simply they wanted to postpone these security critical fixes to be shipped out together with some feature improvements, so to say, and of course perhaps their perception was that, oh, you found it, you're the good guy, you will not exploit it, we can postpone fixing this flaw. But what we saw in the summer that this is not a guarantee that someone else will not find it and will not exploit it. So, but I mean, otherwise, of course, I don't know. Of course, this is also a reputational risk, right? No one wants to show their customers that they don't care about the security of their customer data. So that aspect, of course, is also motivating. But I think that even regardless of that, I mean, everyone is sensible and everyone is reasonable to implement the fixes as soon as possible.
All right, so thanks a lot for the interesting presentation and very thorough answers.